Hello, good morning everyone. This is Abhishek and I'm an organizer of AWS User Group Nashik. Thanks everyone for joining on Saturday morning. And today we are gonna explore about DevOps in general. And this is gonna be a two-part series where we are gonna see some theoretical concepts on getting started with DevOps on AWS, and the second part will be coming in next 2 weeks, which will be totally hands-on and will practically do a lot of things. Um, and let me introduce our speaker. So today we have Sanchit Jain with us. He is an AWS certified expert and he is a very active member in the AWS community, AWS India community. He is also an APN ambassador and he brings in more than 6 years of experience in the industry, and he speaks into multiple AWS user groups, and he has a vast array of services and vast array of different cloud platforms. So yeah, we'll welcome Sanchit.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thanks for that warm welcome. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about my experience in DevOps and how I can help with your user group. Uh, Thank you for that. Thank you for everyone. I know Saturday morning, the summer has just begun. It's a pretty warm weather today.
Yes.
So I pretty appreciate everyone for pulling out the time from your weekend. Saturday mornings are pretty tough after you have like a very stretched weekdays. So thank you for joining and pulling out some time to go through and learn what's DevOps all about with us. And yes, as Abhishek mentioned, we have tried to make this entire kind of training session more impactful. So we have broken it down into two chapters. The first one would be the part one, which we'll do today. And then there will be a follow-up part, which will be around a week after that. We'll have a gap of a week, so you guys can do hands-on and brush-up. And after that, on 26th, which again Saturday 10:30, we'll have the part two, where we'll go more into the advanced concept of it. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen. Just give me a second. So I can see. Okay. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone, which you can see on another side. Cool. So as I said, today we'll be talking about DevOps. I think DevOps has been very renowned in the market. Wherever you go, whichever organization you go, whether it's into cloud, whether it's exactly even like machine learning, or even it's like talking about the data analytics, DevOps becomes a like core fundamental of it. Like how exactly DevOps can help as to learn as a new skill, what exactly you need to do, what are the different services from AWS perspective. So this session overall will talk about right from scratch. First of all, what exactly is DevOps? Why organization do DevOps? So we'll start from scratch, as well as this will focus heavily on the native services which is offered by AWS. There are various other open source tools are also available in market. We'll see outside this session, two sessions if we can get third one, where we talk about those tools, but this two sessions will be heavily focusing about the native offering what AWS provides. And I can see there are many people who have just joined recently. Thank you everyone for tuning it. Good morning. And I think I'll jump on directly so we can take it forward. And please stay tuned throughout this session. So I'll ensure this is not boring. I'll try to make it more interactive. So thank you so much, and let's continue with that. I think Abhishek already introduced about me. My name is Sanchit. I work as a lead architect at Quantify. Along with that, I'm an APN ambassador. I work actively with across different user groups Mumbai, Nashik, across different user groups across India, as well as I do work as a technical speaker for user groups outside India. And you can follow me, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub. I know there are many people who have reached out to me in the past. I always try to ensure that I can respond to you guys. So please do reach out to me if you have any questions about DevOps, cloud computing, career-related thing. I am very happy to help you guys, guide you, and as well as if you need any help in terms of any technical issues or problem solving, I'm even happy to offer that. So please do reach out to me. Don't hesitate. I'm active on all those channels. With that, let me start with the overview of DevOps, right? It's very important that always when you learn something new, it's always important that you learn from why. Like what exactly is the problem? What people used to do before DevOps was in place? Why every organization, you talk about a startup, you talk about like an enterprise like Fortune 500 where you have like 15,000 people, still they want to follow DevOps. You have 5 people team, still you want to follow DevOps. What exactly is DevOps? So before we go exactly in DevOps, let's understand how things used to work in a traditional way. We talk about traditional way. This is how it used to work, where you have the software developers used to be the same. They used to write the code in programming language, which may be Java, .NET, Python, C++. The problem was, as you can see, this all people used to make the changes. Like you can have like program array making the changes around it, but the changes were not been committed into your code base, or there is no kind of synchronization where you can see, even though they forms a one team of group programmers, but the kind of integration, the kind of collaboration you can see missing. They'll build the entire thing what they want to do, and at the end they will merge. The problem which you see in this traditional workflow is, again, the problem things was to work fine, but the problem that you see is when it comes to the entire merge, when it comes to the collaborating all the codes, when you want to integrate it, you see there is a good amount of effort that's required after developing the code, which includes testing, which includes integration of the code, and which includes the deployment of the code. Now, since this code base were been developed and been integrated in bit of like silos, there's a bit amount of communication gap. The communication gap in terms of the programmer language, the communication gap in terms of the testing effort, as well as the communication gap which you can see in the deployment. Now, as we see today, there are different people have been involved. There are software developers are there whose responsibility is to write the code. Then you have the QA testers. There are many people who will be from a testing background. Their responsibility to test the software across different life cycle of development. Then you have the entire release managers whose responsibility is to deploy. Deploy means take the things what you have built into the production after different environments. Now, problem is you see a good amount of gap in all those things, which not only ensure the kind of quality of work what you have done is not up to the mark, the time required to take to production is more, as well as the quality, as well as the kind of synchronization is, I mean, the time required to reach to market was very more. So this was one of the biggest drawback which you see in the traditional way how things used to work. The second thing which happens when without the DevOps was the kind of stuff, right? Most of the time what we have seen, people always try and they try to play with a live wire. This exact kind of synonyms you can think of, like you're going in production and playing a live code, that someone is trying to access your website, he's trying to purchase something, and you are in the back end adding something in database to make that website work. That's how it doesn't work, right? So this is how things used to happen in the past. Again, it obvious, it may work, sometimes even you get a shock. So that's what the problem is. If it works, good for you. If it doesn't work, then you can see like how things works. And that was like I would say it's a mental philosophy of people. I have a production release, I need to do this, I need to do that. Maybe it might work, may it not work. Those are the different things you keep hearing of the people always when it comes to production release. They have like a mental trauma around, I need to release in production. For sure, you have emotionally attached when it comes to production. But this is very common sign of not following a proper DevOps. Wherever you see that people always keep talking about things didn't work in production, it failed, there was no proper missing, I said like this, team did that. This is all signs and symptoms of not following proper DevOps practice. There might be certain organization who still would have been following DevOps, but still if you keep hearing this kinds of buzz, I said this config file needs to be X value, someone set a Y value, someone does this, someone provide like a EC2 instance, which is T2 micro. If you here keep kind of this kinds of stuff, that's pretty sure the organization might be following DevOps, but they are not really following all the principles of DevOps. So that's what exactly DevOps is about, right? That why and what kind of problem you see. Now, let's exactly see how organization look perspective. Now, this is what my picture or your picture would be as an individual, how DevOps can help. But let's see from an organization perspective, why as an organization, every organization is really looking forward to go with DevOps. So you'll see a couple of points what we have seen in the previous slide will be overlapping here. But this comes from a very stakeholder. If you talk about like a CEO, CFO, those kinds of CTOs, for them, how this vision of DevOps looks like, why they are the one who's very motivated to go for DevOps. So there are 8 points. First, building and maintaining the servers. For sure, we always keep hearing, if you talk about the DevOps, building and maintaining the server has been very expensive part of it, time consuming as well as resource intense. When I say resources, human resource intense. No environment management. You don't have proper environment line drawn, like what is dev, what is QA, what is stage, how that workflow and lifecycle works. Again, as we saw in the first slide, the deployment is very slow because you don't have a proper coordination between your team. The deployment is not, deployment slow means the time taken for the deployment is more. The process is still the same, but since there is no proper coordination in the team, there is a high chance of making the errors and the time required to fix the errors, which ultimately take the deployment slow. No shared ownership. As we saw, like each one is responsible for their own segment. I am a programmer, I am responsible for developing. If it works in my laptop, I'm good. But what about if it doesn't work in production? Okay, that's a problem of someone else. So those kinds of stuff you see. No proper configuration management. Now, again, as I said, right, there's a complete silo. You can see like development team is working on a different pace. Testing is doing completely different. Release team is doing completely different. There's no bonding or collaboration. So you don't have properly communication been driven from the developer team. Okay, hey, you need to set XYZ flag to your release team or to your testing team, and that doesn't get documented. And at the last, when it goes to production, it becomes a failure. Deployments are a blocker. This is majorly what if you see the previous slide, it is a big impact because you don't collaborate. The testing, the kind of testing which you do, the kind of peer development which you do, if you don't do it properly, it becomes a blocker because you develop individual with your mindset. You really don't think like how exact other people will be looking forward. Like for very simple example is a login password. If you any application have a login password screen, let's say I am a UI developer. I develop the login password screen assuming the backend API is going to do the validation of password. Now, the backend API, the person who's working as a backend engineer, design the API considering that the validation will be done on the UI side. I just need to get for a given user and password, I need to just get the credential from the database. Now, if we both are working on a different plane, you will understand that, okay, there is no collaboration. Who's going to do the validation part? UI is saying backend will do, backend developer is saying UI is going to do. So that kind of gap is a common thing where you see is pretty common when you don't have DevOps. Production downtime, if there is any failure, you don't have automation. By default, by product, you will have a downtime. And at the last, forget about all those stuff. If you don't even have automation, if you don't even have proper planning, proper coordination, you can't even think about doing security and other kinds of advanced level of kinds of activities like threat test, you load testing, if you talk about security, thread, and those kinds of stuff. I mean, these basic things are not in place. We can't even think about those kinds of stuff. And overall, if we summarize this, all the 8 pointers, the impact on business is very high. First, ineffective utilization of resources. I mean, the human resources, misuse of capital, increase the time, and laborsome process. It's really laborsome process. You have a mental trauma, headache. I may need to make it too broad. I don't know it's going to work or not. Those thought process you see coming out when you don't have a proper DevOps practice. So this is how the DevOps looks if you talk about from an organization perspective, not as a developer. That's how most of the organization are very open. They are always looking for a right resource, that I need a right resource when it comes to DevOps. And they are always open for going to DevOps because of the things what we just saw in the previous slide. Now let's switch back and let's understand how exactly DevOps help, right? What is DevOps? A framework? DevOps is a technology. DevOps is a tool, but DevOps is a culture. There's many aspects, many illusion going around in the people. What exactly is DevOps? Now everyone knows, okay, what is DevOps? But end of the day, what is DevOps? So first of all, let me be very clear. DevOps is a philosophy or is a process. Is a culture, philosophy, or practice or process. It's not a tool that you get that tool from market, you license it, you apply in your organization, and you become a DevOps driven organization. That's not at all the case. DevOps is a philosophy. It's a process, it's a practice which you need to adopt in the organization. So as you see, it works across your entire life cycle of your software development, right? From how you do your project management. I'll tell you why also, right? Most of the people will not agree to that point, but I'll explain you why I'm saying that. it is a very core and integral part of anything what you develop, whether you're developing any data lake platform, whether you're developing any machine learning application, whether you're developing any software application. It's a very core fundamental to all those stuff. And there you start seeing different things which comes up: data ops, ML ops, DevOps, those kinds of stuff. End of the day, this all ops is summarized in kind of the process, the kinds of philosophy, practice which you apply, and this framework or practice help you to have a better coordination, faster ability to reach to market, and proper synchronization. That's what it is. And now if you want to apply these three things, you need to cut through right from day zero when you're thinking that I want to, let's say, build an application. Now, in order to build the application, you need to consider everything: how I'm going to have the collaboration between my dev team, how I'm going to ensure that dev team delivers my code every day in the code repository, code commit, you talk about GitLab or GitHub, how there is a proper pipeline is there to test my code on frequently, to ensure that the code which is tested get released in the production. So it's, we are not waiting one fine day after 2 months I make a release. So those kinds of different things you need to tightly couple with your software development practice and DevOps philosophy that will help you around it, right? So that's why it is very important that you, if you're planning to implement DevOps, the secret sauce, at least if I talk about from my experiences, always start from ground zero, from day one when you're building around it. Again, it's never late to adopt DevOps if you have, let's say, already midway through of some larger project or initiative and you've missed it. It's never late. You should do it. But the right time, if you're already aware about it, then you should apply from day zero, because that will help you to wire it, tune it in that fashion, set up the processes, the governance model, and everything in the right fashion. And that's why you see two things which has worked out very well when you talk about this new era development is the agile project management and DevOps. Agile project management, exactly, some or other way, works very supportive to DevOps culture and philosophy. That's why every organization are agile driven and DevOps philosophy. So if you tell me I come with a waterfall model and project management, I'm doing DevOps, I'll tell you that's very once in a rare scenario where you will hit the right spot or right framework of DevOps in your organization. So that's why if you do agile project management, you will also see how DevOps works. And that's what you will see in upcoming slides, why I'm saying agile works pretty well with DevOps. But if I quickly summarize the point, DevOps, first of all, just be very sure it's not a tool. It's a methodology, philosophy, or practice that you need to apply in your organization that will help you to ensure whatever you're developing is been developed with the proper coordination from development team to the ops team, the release team, along with testing. It cuts through across all of your software development cycle. And what the kind of thing which you develop, you make it short, you make it quality driven, and release the market on the right time. So that's what important is. And as you can see from the word itself of DevOps, dev and ops, there are two split around it, which is development and operational, that it merge together and synchronize that. So that's what you can see here. Now, the biggest difference, right? Many people do ask me offline, you always promote DevOps. Can you tell me what exactly? I am a traditional company which used to do, or maybe let's say traditional way of doing it. How exactly I can move into DevOps? What's the secret of DevOps? The secret of DevOps is nothing. If you see this diagram, let's assume this is your organization A, this is customer B. Previously also, if I talk about 90s, even early 2000, people used to build, test, release. The only secret sauce of DevOps is plan, monitor, this feedback loop. That you don't wait for it. You always been open, reciprocate the feedback, do a retrospective around it, and learn. Now, in order to do the feedback, there are multiple things you need to do. First, don't wait. Keep releasing the products. Keep testing the products. Make it production ready. And plan and monitor once it is in production. These are the four things which DevOps had added on the traditional layer of doing the software engineering work. And that mix is what we call as the DevOps framework here. So if you see, this is a common pipeline. Wherever if you go, if you consult anyone who is there in software industry from early 20s, like in 1990s or 1980s, you will see this is the common thing what we do. Build, test, and release. But this plan and monitor is something what DevOps has incorporated new on top of that traditional way to ensure you get a constant feedback, very real time, and that's help you to go to the market faster. And this is based on the CRAMS framework, which is have like 5 pillars: culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. So DevOps, technically, if you go through my definition, right, the definition which I was talking about, it falls under this 5 buckets. As I said, it's a culture. It relies on automation. You need to lean, constantly follow this framework. Measurement, you need to measure it, and collaborate, share. Whatever the feedback you have at the end, you share that feedback, that learning across the team. So it's not just adapting DevOps, but you need to follow this 5 principle, and that's what we'll see how exactly you need to do that. What different tools are available, what different strategy available from AWS to get your organization to be DevOps driven. Now, as I was talking about in the previous slide, if you go narrow down in the different processes, first there is a developer, then you have a code repository, you have the build process. Now, build process for the guys who have just been very new to DevOps, you take a Java project, let's say, or Python project, you compile that project, right? You create a jar file of it. You create a compilable project. So that's called as build in simple example. Then you test it. After the testing, you have that artifact. That artifact is what something becomes your entire artifact repository. Then you have the code deployment around it. Like you deploy that code to production and then you monitor and log in. As you can see, that what DevOps has done is the feedback loop. Like this cycle keeps going. It's not just only one way from development to production, code deploy, and you're done. It's a constant feedback which keeps going. That's what you see, the different practice, how to achieve this constant feedback. Infrastructure as a code from automation perspective, microservices, continuous integration, continuous deployment, communication, collaboration, monitoring, logging. I know this all are like big things. Couple of them you might be already knowing it. Couple of them are very new for it. So that's what exactly we'll see across in upcoming slides. What are the different services AWS provides? But infrastructure as a code, you can think about automation, microservices, like how we can build small things that can help you to deliver the entire platform. Continuous integration, as I said, don't wait for the right time. Today is the right time. Go and release. Go and check out your code. Continuous deployment is you keep ready in state that you can deliver your code changes in the production. Constant communication and collaboration across the team. It should not be I'm a dev team, I am ops team, my responsibility to develop, my responsibility is to deliver. Collaborate together and work together and measure and monitor. It's also important that once you release the software, you see how the software is performing and evolve and learn from it. The advantage of doing the DevOps. Why every organization always look for DevOps? High speed operation, rapid development, increased reliability, high scalability, security, and better collaboration. If I simplify all this stuff, it helps you to reach out to the market very faster. It helps you to get the visibility, the prototype very fast in the market. You can give it to your customer. You can get the constant feedback, and that helps you to rapidly deliver. That's overall any organization perspective they look forward. As an individual, it's a better collaboration, better learning, and it's help you to revert back if there is any kind of error that comes up, that faster you can go fast in the production, apply your entire framework of DevOps, and you can easily fix it, and you can look forward and learn from it. So that's about DevOps. Now, generally, how exactly DevOps cycle looks like. So this are the different services which AWS provides. We'll learn in upcoming slides what does each services means, how they work. But if I take about the previous slide where we had someone, I mean, if I go back and if we had a previous slide like this exact one, where you see that there's a code repository, there is a build and testing, then you have the entire deployment process and log monitoring. If you take this across AWS services, then this is the landscape that falls. Like this becomes your entire code repository, this becomes your entire build and test phase, and this becomes your automation, deployment and automation part, which help you to deliver the software in production. And this becomes your entire pipeline, the visual workflow. So this is how it looks like. And that's what we will be demonstrating it at the end of this session. But this is how it looks like, how things works in this time. And along with that, this becomes the DevOps services. AWS also provides other services which works in collaboration with this dev services like Amazon EC2, ECS, Lambda, CloudFormation, OpsWork, and Config. Now, many people will be already knowing these services like EC2, Lambda. For sure, you would have heard at multiple places. But these are exactly, you can think of other automation and platform as a service which works in collaboration with the dev offering or DevOps developer tool offering given by the AWS. That's what we will be looking couple of demos today at the end, and couple of advanced level demos in the next slide, next session itself, in the which we have on 26, where we'll be leveraging the same workflow and running a couple of demos on EC2 instance. So let's understand what are the different AWS services when it comes to DevOps. Now, as we understood, it's all about continuous integration, continuous delivery, infrastructure and automation, monitoring and security, and platform as a service. So AWS provides multiple different services across each of these layers, starting from the entire CI/CD. This is an abbreviation what we use in industry, continuous integration and continuous delivery. People use CI and CD. You have code commit, you have code build, code deploy, and code pipeline. That becomes the one segment. From infrastructure automation, you have your entire cloud formation, ops work, system manager, and code deploy. Monitoring and security, you see different kinds of services which comes for monitoring, like CloudWatch, CloudTrail. That's very basic. You talk about it. You talk about X-ray or config. Those becomes your monitoring and security kind of services. And at the last layer, you see platform as a service. Now, overall, end of the day, you need a platform where you can deploy your service, right? And then you automate that platform and then you apply CI/CD on top of it. There you see different services like Lambda, Beanstalk, ECS, EKS, Fargate, those kinds of stuff. I know there's a couple of them will be new service for you, but basically Lambda and EC2 are very common. This will, you guys would have heard those questions pretty, those services named well, right? Before we move ahead, just want to take a pause. I think any questions you guys have about DevOps, I think I've covered a lot of theory in this half an hour. Any question, any doubts what you have so far about how exactly the DevOps is, what different kinds of strategy and kind of stuff? Please, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. Any questions, guys? Okay, I assume there is no questions. Please feel free. Don't wait for the pause. If you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat. I'll just answer it as and when I see a question. So moving towards next, and now what we'll do is we'll try to focus on each of this layer. Okay, that's a very good question that I've seen. How much coding skill is required? Wonderful question, I would say, because many people I have seen, they ask me, this is a constant question that comes up. I'll tell you, when it comes to DevOps, you should have at least basic knowledge of programming. I won't say, first of all, programming is a very good thing. We should learn from it. But let's say if you're not a very hardcore developer, like you're not solving any complex algorithmic kind of problem statement, which you should always, I mean, look forward as you grow and mature in DevOps. But as a beginner level, you should know basics of Python, or there are multiple. Python is there, shell script is there, Ruby is there. Mostly I've seen people when it comes to DevOps, most of this I've seen like Ruby or Python or Golang. Now the Golang has also come up. But if I talk about specifically from a Python perspective, you should know basic of Python, basic of how to write object-oriented programming, and the coding best practices. That's what you should follow around it. When it comes to complexities, time complexity, space complexity, data structures and all, you will see as you start growing around it, you will need it when it comes to processing and heavy utilization of Python. But as a beginner level, you should be knowing like three things. Basics of Python, the entire object-oriented programming, and the coding best practices. Hope I answer your question. Cool. Please feel free to post any other questions if you have on the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. With that, I'll move to the next one. So in the next layer, we'll be talking about the first layer where we have the continuous integration and continuous delivery around it. Now in continuous integration and continuous delivery, we'll be talking about, ideally there are 4 services here widely used: code commit, code build, and code pipeline. And there is 4th service, which is code deploy. I've took out the code deploy and put it in the automation and deployment strategy, but ideally that falls under this bucket itself. So if someone or any interview or someone technical person asking you what AWS offers from CI/CD, so it's a 4 services broadly: code commit, code build, code pipeline, code deploy. Those are the 4 services from CI/CD perspective. But since we are trying to understand from scratch, I've tried to make it separate as per the different life cycle or different layers what we have. So first we'll start with code commit. Okay. Very simple. I'll talk about code commits. Many people on this call would be already knowing about things like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. There are different kinds of code repositories are available. Couple of them are free, couple of them are licensed. We won't go in detail about what their offerings are. That's exactly what AWS also provides as code commit. Code commit, in simple, you can see your secure private Git repository, which is offered by AWS itself in the AWS entire other service stack. So that's what the code commit you can think of. There is no other difference. The way you operate on it, the way the commands are, Git and all, it's the same. The best part, which I feel I like the most about code commit, is the native integration. That's the magic, I would say, of AWS's or native services, that it easily integrates with your central entire security and governance model. So if you have the IAM roles and those kinds of stuff already set up, you can leverage that same thing for your code commit as well. So you don't have to set up a different kind of a governance model, different kinds of permissions and all, and rest of the everything, like the branch tools you talk about, the different kinds of notification when it is merge and pull and those kinds of stuff, easily integration with CI/CD. Those all things you can do with how you can do with other repositories, the same what you can do with code commit. So that's not new. But the only, I think, the small thing that works pretty well in case of code commit is the native integration with AWS IAM service. That way, it simplifies the entire stuff from the access perspective. Again, as I said, rest everything is fully managed, secure, highly available, collaboration wise, faster development cycle, and use your existing tools. As I said, CI/CD. This is a common and standard where you see across different kinds of code repository provided. But the only wow factor, as I mentioned, it's integration with the IAM part of it. So that's about code commit. Again, I'm quickly going through this all the services because we'll look into the demo where I'll go on AWS console and we'll talk about how the code commit look like, what are different the services. But before we go to the demo today, I just want to quickly help you to understand what are these different services and how they differ from the existing tools in the market. Code build. Code build, as I said, very simple for the people who have just new or are in still college. Code build is like the build, the packaging of your code. When you always write your code, it's a raw form. It's a either in .java, .p file, or .c, those kinds of raw format. The entire compiled or binary version of that code is what you do in the code build. Now, each language will have a different way of thing. Python will have .pyc file, Java will have a jar file. That's how generally the code build. And in code build, people also do is the testing. What kind of testing? Code review, static testing, code analysis, code coverage, code best practices. Those are the kind of static kind of testing what you do on your code also in the code build. So many organization, how they really work on ground is, as a developer, if I write a code now, for sure, before the code moves to production, we need to do some checks. Now, checks is the kind of binary what I'm using, the library what I'm using. Is the library secure? The code I have written is from a code coverage, code standard perspective, it is good. Have I commented my code? Have I written any sorts of unit level testing? Those are the different things that takes place in code build. Again, there are different tools available in the market for doing the build process. Some are paid, some are free, like open source. The open source widely used in the market, if I talk about, is Jenkins. Many organizations, before even AWS started offering this, still I think from early, I also have used Jenkins very heavily. From somewhere 2014 onwards, Jenkins has been widely used in the market. The best part about code build is if you have a Jenkins server in your company, you can leverage and integrate the same Jenkins server as a part of code build. So it's not necessary that you have to use what AWS offers, the Docker image and all, which we'll see in next session. You can also integrate your existing Jenkins server and perform all the deployment, or all the build process in help of the Jenkins server itself. The reason of providing the Jenkins server also, right? Couple of times I've seen that there are organizations which has the legacy way of building or legacy dependency. When they do a build, they have some dependency of legacy application or kind of stuff. So if you have an existing Jenkins server which is running, let's say, on your on-prem or some other infrastructure, you can integrate and you can easily handle that dependency unless and until you move to cloud or what's your entire plan is. So that's the best part of code build, that it not only just provide you the new way of building the stuff, but also integrate with your existing build server. And functionality perspective, it's exactly the same. You can build, package the job, you can do some security testing, code static testing, those kinds of stuff. it's pay as you go, as well as you don't have to worry. It's a managed service. Like all tools, what I've talked about, code commit, if I talk about code build, code pipeline, and code deploy, all four are managed offering from AWS. So you really don't have to worry about the server. Now, I've really, if I talk about my experience with Jenkins, I've like spent like over 2 years on Jenkins. The problem, I mean, the tool was very good, but you have to install that on EC2 instance. You need to ensure your EC2 scales. You have to patch it. You have to increase the volume. There's a lot of amount of overhead that comes up. It's not that simple when you start using on a larger project. Where code build, I've seen my experience been very simple because it's a managed offering. Again, you don't have to worry about it. And from a code perspective, the entire package all gets stored in S3. So you can easily version it. You can look into the history, how things, what kind of different builds have been done over a period of time. Those all gets very simplified. So that's the best part of code build. Moving towards the next is the code pipeline. As the name suggests, it's a pipeline. It's like a visual workflow that wraps code commit, code build, code deploy. It wraps into it together and build a visual end-to-end workflow. So whenever you trigger a code pipeline. The code, I mean, whatever it happens, you will trigger a code pipeline, and that will take care of pulling the code. Is there is new change, building that code, testing it, and deploying it. So code pipeline is like a visual workflow which can help you around to do that. Again, you just don't have to worry about anything. It's very simple. Just you to integrate what different offerings you need out of those three services with zero. I mean, I'll say always serverless to zero administrator you need to do. Very rapid, and you can do all those kinds of stuff like CloudWatch monitoring. You can do. You can have like an event trigger if someone delivers a code. You can do that, as well as I was talking about initially. The best part is it's not only just supportive to code commit. Let's say if you already have, let's say GitHub, it can also integrate with GitHub. So what I'll do as a demonstration, today's demo I'll focus with code commit, but the next session demo I'll do with GitHub. We'll try to connect our code pipeline with Git repository, and we'll try to integrate. So even if I make a change in GitHub repository, it will trigger my code pipeline, and my code pipeline will do all those cycle of build, test, and deploy. So that's the best part. If you have existing investment on GitHub repository, that also you can take it forward. You don't need to migrate for using code pipeline. So that's a very best part, easy of integration. So that's about the three services when it comes to CI/CD. Before moving to the next, I see a question here. Is DevOps practice always good for all types of projects? Exactly. That's a very spot on. DevOps is the go-to tool. Again, DevOps is, as I said, it's a practice. That practice will help you to discipline yourself, ensure that you have a constant feedback. And overall, if I keep technology out of it and anything from a business perspective, it gives you a constant feedback wherever you are going. Feedback as an internal parameter from a timeline perspective, cost perspective, utilization. That's one part. From a customer perspective, you get a constant feedback. What's how the customer is he satisfied, what is the sentiments are. So DevOps is the go-to framework, I would say, for any kind of project, which is AIML, data analytics, or a software development. You should heavily follow DevOps. Again, on what scale you need to apply DevOps, that I would say is very subjective based on the maturity of organization. What I mean is, now if an organization is very new, and if I start talking about all things in one go, they will feel really not satisfied. Okay, I need to change my entire company the way it operates. So you have to take it slowly, steadily, and the way that how things started mature. But DevOps is the right way to look forward. So let's understand the services which comes under infrastructure and automation. As I said in the previous slide also, technically code deploy falls under CI/CD layer, and the same developer tool set which is offering provided by AWS. I have placed it under the infrastructure and automation. The reason will, when you go on code deploy, I'll tell you what exactly the kind of deployment it is. So first is CloudFormation. I think most of the people, if they have not used CloudFormation, but they would have heard about the CloudFormation. Like I can bet every people on this call, if like we are very new on AWS, then it's a different thing. But if you have just like the cloud practitioner certification also, for sure you would be aware about the CloudFormation part of it. So CloudFormation, in a very simple word, is automation. Infrastructure is a code. Like whatever the infrastructure is, like the best part, as we saw in the previous slide about the DevOps, is the documentation, run book, playbook, that kind of stuff what you have. So when you have the entire infrastructure, let's say I'm developing an EC2 instance, Let's say I'm then giving an ALB on top of it, and I have a Route 53 here. If I have these three things, the best thing is you will still, if you're doing it manually, let's say you're tagging an ALB on EC2 instance in terms of health check, the drain out settings and all, those are the niche, those are the integral settings which you need to do. I'm pretty sure if I ask you to repeat the same setting for twice, thrice, every environment, you will start making a mistake. You won't do it perfectly. There exactly CloudFormation helps you. It documents everything. And documents in such a form that it not only just help you as a memory guide, but it automates it. That tomorrow, if you want to do it again, you don't have to do it manually. You just upload this thing, run it, and it will take care of it. That's what we'll demonstrate, how exactly I set up the EC2 instance, install a LAMP stack in it, and run a PHP code. That's what I will demonstrate at the end of this today's session, which will help you to understand what exactly the CloudFormation is and how it works and all. I would say any solution, again, as we were talking about the DevOps, this plays very core and integral part of the DevOps philosophy, the entire practice. Any kind of workload you do, whether it's SageMaker machine learning, whether it's EMR Redshift, or whether you talk about the entire software like ECS or Beanstalk, CloudFormation is the way where you should automate it, because it will help you multiple fronts, to the time it takes to deploy the platform, the time it takes from disaster recovery and those kinds of stuff. It will help you to fast track all those kinds of different offerings. So you should always look forward from CloudFormation. Again, as I said, it's very important that how you take to your organization and then slowly and steadily around it. And AWS also, the best part of the entire infrastructure as a setting is, many a times previously what used to happen is people used to think CloudFormation is only meant for the DevOps engineer. Now, recently, like when I say recently, is like a year and a half back, AWS has released Cloud Development Kit, CDK, CDK V2, CDK V1, CDK V2. CDK also helps a software engineer. Like if you are just a pure UI developer, you know how to write transcripts, right? Like TypeScripts. If you know how to write TypeScript, if you know how to write Python, you can use same way also to write or design, and behind the scene with help of CDK, the CloudFormation templates get generated, which you can apply. So it's not just the very niche programming language or some skills which only is limited to DevOps. AWS is also helping and extending that knowledge to other roles also. So that's how they are heavily promoting an infrastructure as a code, which is an automation strategy, and you should look forward to it. Let's understand why you need to use CloudFormation, right? I've just tried to make this particular segment a bit detailed because it's very important and very core for your learning. So first is why you should use CloudFormation. Now, I've sold too much about CloudFormation, but still many people would have the why you want to use. First, as I said, it's machine learning, it's data analytics, or it's software. It supports all different types of resources. Easy to use in multiple fronts. The way it's very declarative approach, like how you write any syntax in JSON and YAML format. It's the same thing. In JSON and YAML format, you have to write like a syntax, like a modules. Flexible and declarative. So as you see the previous point itself, it's quite overlap. It's very flexible. It's very declarative. Whatever settings are available for EC2 instance, which is allowing, let's say, a Elastic IP, allowing security group, IAM role, load balancer, even not just limited to the properties of EC2. Let's say even if you want to run some user data within EC2, like for the folks who are very new, user data is something like an automation, like the automation which you want to do. Something, let's say, for example, you have a EC2 instance and you want to install AWS CLI in it, or you want to install Python in it. You can install with help of CloudFormation. You can bootstrap, you can run some scripts around it, which may be Python shell script or even Java, and you can install it in the user data, which I'll show you in the sample. That also you can do. So it's very flexible, declarative. Customization through parameter. The best and the important part of CloudFormation is it should be region and account agnostic, which means is if you're writing this this is as a code, the code should not work in your account, in your region. It should also work in another account, another region, which you can achieve through customization through parameters. And at the last, how it simplifies, right? As I was talking about the CDK, which helps the other programmers or developer community. Similarly, if you are, let's say, not even developer, you hate coding. Still, you can write CloudFormation templates with drag and drop approach. So AWS itself in the console, they provide the drag and drop UI where you can drag the service, you can configure the properties of the services, and with help of the designer tool itself, you can write the CloudFormation and apply. So still, if you are not coming from a technical or a programming background also, still they can help you to achieve that. So that's why CloudFormation has been a go-to tool and has been a very important when it comes to the DevOps part of it, and it is consists of the automation pillar. Now, how exactly the entire CloudFormation works? So first you write the template, which we will, this same workflow, don't worry, we'll do the demonstration where you understand around it. But first you write the template. Now we'll, in the upcoming slide, we'll see what exactly or how the structure of template is. You upload that template to S3. Now there are two features are available on console. You can manually do it or you can upload to S3. Ideally, when you have the CI/CD and all those kinds of stuff, the template is there from your GitHub to your S3 bucket. They automatically clone it and put to S3 bucket. And from S3, CloudFormation refers it and it launched that template, and the outcome is the stack. Now, do remember there are two important things are there: template and stack. This is a template. Any file, the actual file which is in JSON and your entire YAML format is called as template. Compiled version, the output which CloudFormation generate from the template is called as a stack, which is like a package. You can think of like a zip file. Within that zip file, you have multiple different files: PNG, JPEG, PDF, right? But what you do, you think as this is a one zip. Similarly, the CloudFormation stack do holds different kinds of resources, different variation of same resources, different properties around it. But at the end, you see that as a one stack. Even though if I had like 100 resources or 150 resources, on the UI, it thinks like a one single compiled package as one stack. If you delete that stack, all those resources, all 100, 150 will get deleted by default, unless and until you enable certain advanced configuration, then it will stay, otherwise it will get deleted. Or reverse. If let's say due to some reason, if it fails to launch out of that 151 particular resource, let's say 150th resource, it fails to launch, it will delete the entire stack. All 149 resources will get deleted. So it thinks as one single package. If it launch, it will launch all the resources. If it fails, it will fail the deployment of all the resources. So do remember, template is the file in JSON and YAML format. Your entire stack is the compiled version, a single package of all the resources, which is of different resources, not just one type. So this is how the workflow, simple workflow look like. You have your code, put it to S3 bucket. Either you upload it manually or you have different CI/CD tool or automation way to do it. Then CloudFormation service converts that templates into the stack. Now, what exactly is the template? As we talk about template is like the in a JSON and YAML format. You have the structure, the declarative structure in a file where you tell CloudFormation what you need to launch first, how you need to launch, and what are the different properties around it. Those are the basic core construct. And then on top of it, how exactly you can customize it through parameters, customize it to ensure that you can make it more readable. Now, most of the people are very good. I'll talk about my experience. Many people are very good with writing the CloudFormation. They do have like 100, 200 lines of code when it comes to CloudFormation. But the basic things, they still start missing the basic things is like description. Now, no one is going to read your 200 lines of CloudFormation. But there are very small basic hygiene things like you add a description, what you're going to do. You add metadata about your parameters. You try to make it more customized so it can run across different environments. Those are the very hygiene best practices which people always tend to fail when it comes to writing the CloudFormation. So those are the different things where CloudFormation works when it comes to when it comes to template part of it. They do provide those kinds of things. So when it comes to the format, so when it comes to AWS CloudFormation, they provides kind of different kinds of objects, like your format version is there, your description is there, metadata, parameters, mapping, condition, Terraform, resources, outputs. These are all different 9, I would say, functions or internal capability of templates, or you can say syntax. Now, any programming language, you have different syntax, right? So, very simple. Out, you print out, print f, print ln, you print out, log. So you can read about it. What's an outcome of the execution? Like similarly, you have different way to accept the input from user, to print output. Similarly, CloudFormation also provides this internal settings, functions that you can write the good quality of the code. And those are like 9 different stuff which AWS provides, 9 different objects you can think of. But the mandatory one out of all these 9 is the resources, which we'll see in the upcoming slide. Now, technically, this is how your entire JSON structure. This is again a sample. This is how your entire JSON, if you have a template in a JSON format, this is how you look like. This is in a YAML format. There is no, I would say, plus or minus in terms of the features and functionality. You write in JSON, you write in YAML. It's like a description or the descriptive way of designing the template. Feature wise, functionality wise, it's still the same. Like if you are a fan of YAML, you can go with YAML. If you don't know YAML or if you have been following with JSON, go with JSON. Features wise, it's both the same. Before I move ahead, I think there is a question. What kind of testing can be done in AWS code build? Okay. Now, when it comes to the testing of code builds, there are multiple ways you can do in the code build. Like you can package your, like if I talk about Java, like you can have your unit testing, your other frameworks as a part of your entire stuff. So technically, code build is like a container. I mean, not technically, it's a container itself. It's a Docker which provides as a platform. On that platform, you need to write your own custom scripts of testing, of unit testing and all that you can do it, as well as there are additional advanced hooks which you can do it if you want to trigger something, or if you, as I said, you want to get it from Jenkins or those kinds of stuff, you want to run on Jenkins or that also you can do it. So it can do all those kinds of stuff, and all those kinds of stuff you can do around with help of the code build from some testing. So the template structure I was talking about, template structure. So this is how the template structure look like. So if I can zoom this a bit. So in case of template structure, I think I'm not able to increase the font here. But this is how the template structure look like. Let me put the cursor. That first you have the version of it. Then you have a description. As you can see, the way beautifully it has been described: launch an EC2 instance running Apache, expose default page to the internet, and hardcode to work only with US East. Now, I don't even need to talk about this template. It's very simple language. One person has written in that, okay, hey, I'm launching an EC2 instance. I'm installing an Apache server, and this is going to only work in US East. If I give you this template, even if you don't know about CloudFormation, you can just read the simple language and you can understand it. That's why it is very important that you follow all those different sections, even though resources is the main section. Now, then you have the parameters. As I was talking about in why CloudFormation, also one of the very important point that it helps you to customize through parameters. And that customization you can done with help of these parameter sections. Now, things like generally, you have dev environment, you have testing environment, people call UAT stage, and then you have the production environment. When it comes to the entire your end, remaining 2 lower environments like dev or UAT, people try to launch a lower compute resources, and in production they try to launch a higher resource. Like very simple example, T2 micro, maybe T2 large and M5 large or M5X large. If you don't customize or don't do it from parameter, you will hard code it. Then that's the same thing you need to run. Like if you're, let's say production, if you're making M5X large, the same you need to run with dev, same you need to run in UAT, and for sure in production you need it. The cost will be higher if you don't do that. The cost will be higher. Again, there are it's not about the cost also. There are certain settings which you don't want to enable it in dev and UAT, but same you want to do it in production. Those also can't be achieved if you don't use parameter in a right way. So those are the small things which help you to follow the best practices and also segregate or have different way you operate in different environments. So parameters are very important. Next, moving to the resources. Now, as I was talking about, if you think logically, CloudFormation is all about automation of resources. If you don't provide resources section itself, what you are going to automate? Resource means any AWS services. Like it can be as such, can be simple as creating a static IP address, creating an S3 bucket, deploying an EC2 instance, any resources, or creating a security group itself. This is all about the automation of the resources. And if you don't provide the resource section itself, doesn't matter you provide description, you provide metadata and all, it's not going to be meaningful. That's why it is very mandatory that first of all, you need to have it from best practice perspective, the above layers. But the only mandatory thing to make CloudFormation work is the resource section. So let's say if you're very new, you're going to write the CloudFormation for the first time, always resource section is the important thing. The above parameters, the description, the metadata, outputs, this all you can add later, but resource is the core thing. If you don't provide resource, the CloudFormation will fail. And at the last is the output. The name says println, what we do, println, printf, like whatever the output you require, maybe the IP address, the IP address of EC2 instance, or maybe let's say some specific ARN of the resources that you print in the output. So once the CloudFormation is done, from the output section itself, you can refer the detail of that resource. So that's how the structure of template look like. The same I will zoom in and I'll walk you through when we'll be doing the demo. Moving towards the next topic, which is the code deploy. As I was talking about code deploy, now this is around the deployment of the code. It helps you to automate the deployment of the code. So infrastructure, if you talk about the CloudFormation, it is the automation of the infrastructure, provisioning of the infrastructure. Code deploy help you to the automation or deployment or automating the deployment of the code base on that base framework. So think of this way, you're launching a website. Now, for the first time, you launch the entire CloudFormation that help you to deploy the EC2 instance and a LAMP stack in it. Now, as and when you start working on that website, the code will change. The infrastructure will remain the same. The code will change, and in that code, how we can ensure that you don't have to relaunch again and again your infrastructure, but you still have the flexibility to automate the deployment of your code. There exactly code deploy will help you. Your base infra remains the same. Code deploy will help you around to automate the deployment of things. And along with that, there are different patterns of deployments are there. Blue, green, all in one, or you can talk about different other patterns which have code deploy around it, which you can follow. The whole idea of deployment is how you can minimize the downtime of your existing one. So always it is important when you make the changes. It's important that you make that changes very gracefully. It should not affect your existing customers. Like very simple example, let's say AWS. Have you ever seen AWS comes up with a banner, sorry, I am under maintenance, come up after half an hour? Never, right? They do it very gracefully that you also become surprised. I just locked in how it got changed. Like I got surprised honestly when that new console got into it. Like I saw a pop-up, I was like, okay, I was just working around it. How I got this pop-up now? So that it's very graceful that at the end user, you don't even recognize how the new changes have been applied behind the scene. So that's how we should learn from the way even AWS internally operates, not leveraging the different services, but what are the different practices they do. It's really very impactful that you have to understand like how exactly they organize their different service team, what is their DevOps practices, because you have millions of users working on AWS. The gracefully they release new features, functionality, make it live. If you start learning those things, you can build any complex application in a very seamless way. So that's about the code deploy. I see a question here. If I need to make any changes in running resources, how will really apply my application? That's exactly, I think you hit the right time that I was talking about, that you already have a resource, infra resource EC2 running. And if you want to make a change in your code, that's exactly what the code deploy is. Like the same example which I gave of the website, that if I want to make a change in my existing website itself, how I can do it, and with help of different patterns of code deploy, all at once, half at a time, blue, green, those kinds of canary deployment. There are multiple different patterns that I have deployment, which you can follow and minimize the entire downtime when it comes as an end user perspective. So that's about the code deploy. Moving towards the next, this is a very quick small topic before we move to the demo, but it's very important. Even though it's very small, this is more like for you guys to do a homework. Like I've talked about a lot. So many people ask me, I mean, someone even asked me about the question about, do you need programming language, or how I can learn, how I can start working out. If you want to start, let's say you're very newbie, you have just started working on AWS. This is the first thing you should start from. Cloud Shell, SDK, CLI. Now you come from programming, you are from a DevOps, you come from a programming, or you are very hardcore, very professional programmer. You need the medium to interact. AWS console works pretty fine for the freshers, for the beginner. When you always talk about developing something for enterprise scale, you cannot go on console and do it, where you need things like automation, things like infrastructure as a code, or the entire CloudFormation, CDK, code deploy, those kinds of stuff. There, you need things like Cloud Shell, SDK, and CLI. Let's understand what are these three. First, SDK. SDK is a software development toolkit. Again, it's very simple. Whichever programming language you know, JavaScript, Python, PHP, .NET, Ruby, Java, Go, Node.js, C++. AWS provides their SDK. So if you come from any heavy programming language, let's say I come from Python, so I can use their Python SDK, which is the Boto 3, very renowned in the market. I can use that Boto 3 and I can do any operation. The same operation which I can do from console, let's say creating an S3 bucket, launching a EC2 instance, deploying a cloud formation, or executing any CI/CD pipeline. Whatever I can do it from the console, same I can do it with the help of the automation. We'll see in the next session how to run a Lambda, like how to write a Boto 3 code in a Lambda and how to achieve some automation with the help of Lambda also in the next session. But any programming language you come from, AWS provide a wide range of, or variety range of the kind of SDKs in different ecosystem, which you can leverage with good documentation. You can leverage and you can automate the entire part of it along with the other tools what we have learned. So that's about the SDK around it. I'll try to, when I'll give the presentation in the GitHub README file, I'll also try to add documentation of this SDK. So if you come from any programming background, you can refer to that SDK overview. For an example, as I was talking about, I come from a Python background. So this is how generally for the people who come from Python, and if you used AWS in the past, you would have done similar kind of stuff. You would have installed pip install, you would have installed the Boto 3 library, you would have initialized the object, what resource you want to do, like S3, EC2 and all, and then you would have performed any action. This other like very simple code in 3 steps. Install the SDK, declare the object, and leverage that object to perform the action. Now this code snippet, for the people who are new, I am importing this library, I'm creating an object for S3 in this particular step, and in this step I'm doing a for loop to print all the bucket names in my account. That's what I'm trying to achieve in this simple code snippet. And again, I've given a kind of a Boto 3 reference also, API reference. If you want to really go through, it's a very good, clean documentation and with good examples. You can refer this documentation, even try to achieve or try to execute something in when you get a free chance around it. But please go and execute it. Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell, this is a very good offering which AWS has come up with. That what happens many times as in when you're working in DevOps, you want a quick capability, a quick kind of an sandbox kind of an environment, browser, sandbox itself, where you can go run some operations on it. Very simple, run certain CLI commands, troubleshoot something and all. Where the one option previously, if I talk about a few years back, it was either you do in your local machine or you spin up EC2 instance. You need to pay the cost. I mean, if you do it in your EC2, in your laptop, you need to set up your laptop with all the access key, secret key, those kinds of stuff. If you do it on EC2 instance with IAM role, you need to do all those kinds of other activities like pay the cost of EC2, set up EC2 with tools and everything. What AWS has done, a very simple thing is they have integrated this temporary kind of a cloud shell, which is referred to like a temporary, I would say, sandbox kind of a thing in the console itself. Like you don't have to pay for the cost. It's pre-authenticated. You can easily use from the browser itself. Like we'll show this demonstration when I'm in AWS console. It's very simple. You just have to click one particular icon. It will take few minutes to set up everything. And from browser itself, I'll get the like a Linux window where I can do anything. I can run I can write my Python code. I can do anything. And again, the best part is you don't even have to worry about those all access key, secret key, and role kind of stuff. It's pre-authenticated with the credentials you're using for the console login. And it's very integrated with the console. So that's about the Cloud Shell. CLI. If you are not from a programmer background, you are more from, let's say, command line and you're pretty good with shell scripts and those kinds of stuff, you can use CLI, like command line interface. From command line interface itself also, you can do the same stuff. So if you come from PowerShell, you come from, let's say, Linux kind of an environment, you can use CLI offering of AWS and you can interact with any of the AWS services. Similarly, how we can do it from the console and SDK. Ideally, for any person who is new for this AWS thing, there are 3 ways you can interact with AWS. One is a CLI, one is SDK, and the third one is the console. So these are the go-to tool and must necessary tool before you start exploring cloud formation and the entire DevOps, because these are the handy tool which will help you to troubleshoot, which will help you to fast track your entire DevOps pipelines and those kinds of stuff. And the best example how you can do with the CLI, right? So you can download the CLI binary. You need to download the binary, whichever you have. Like it supports everything: Mac, Windows, Linux, even Amazon Linux. You need to download this, install it, and then you can do the similar operation. Like here, what I'm doing is like very simple: AWS S3 LS. So that's what you can do around those kinds of stuff. And again, I've given a sample reference of CLI. So this is a very simple example I've given, but if you have a complex requirement, you can refer this AWS documentation, which is very good, very elaborative. You can refer that, and you can learn other different commands for different other resources. So that's about what we have covered, most of the theory parts, I would say, which is required in terms of understanding or setting up the foundational part of it and the first layer of the tool. I'll take a pause here. Do you guys have any questions about what we have explored so far before we move to the demo session? So there is a question: is it correct if we delete any AWS resources manually provision using CloudFormation, then we can't delete other resources in CloudFormation? No, that's wrong. So I'll tell you. Okay, many a times what happens is when you try to delete a particular resources, it might get stuck. So you can easily do it. You can go and you can delete the other resources. You will see a kind of CloudFormation will automatically delete all the resources. The reverse scenario we were talking about. Let's say, for an example, you have an S3. You have deployed via CloudFormation an S3 bucket, and you upload some object. In that scenario, what happens is, since in order to delete the S3 bucket, you need to delete all or clean the bucket. You need to erase all the data which is there in that bucket, and then only you can do it. But most of the time, people, what they do in a hurry, they go and delete the CloudFormation without erasing the content of the bucket. The CloudFormation will fail. There also, it will skip. There will be an option where you can say skip this particular resources from the deletion and delete the rest. But that's not correct, that if you manually go and delete it, then you can't delete the other resources. That's not the case in CloudFormation. I hope you answered your question. And any other questions, please post on the chat. In AWS SDK, how to apply it to Node.js. So exactly, this JavaScript is the one which you can use for your Node.js also. So you don't have to worry about it. I think, if I am correct, I think the Node.js was the earliest one, along with Python, what AWS used to offer. So for sure, you can use Node.js also. You can simply, even the way when we are running the Lambda also, you can see the Node.js and different environments. They also provide the Node.js, and you can easily use that. That should not be a problem. Any other questions, guys, before we move to the demo? Again, don't worry, don't hesitate. If you have other questions, we can pick it up later also at the end of the session. But once we are in the demo, I'll want to quickly walk you through with 2 quick demos. So if you have any other questions, please put it in the chat. If not, then we'll move towards the demo slide. Suppose we have provisioned 10 EC2 instances in CloudFormation, delete 1 EC2 instance manually, then while deleting the stack will it throw error? Technically, no, it won't throw an error. It will try to delete it. It will try to delete it, and it will go and delete it. It will go and delete that out. That should not be a problem in that. And if you have, I think you have maybe a specific scenario where you face this issue. It might be some other dependency which we can look into the offline. I think you can please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can look into it. If you have a specific scenario which seems like from your question, we can look into the backend. There would be some external dependency you would have on that resources. As I was talking about S3 example, there would be a specific like Elastic IP or some network interface would be mapped. Because of that, you would have got an error, but otherwise it should not be a problem. Okay, I think we are good. So again, don't wait. You can please post your question. I'll look into that question as in we move forward. So with that, let me switch over to my AWS console. So this is my AWS console. First, we'll start with the smallest one, quick demo. So I was talking about the Cloud Shell in my presentation. So here, this is how the AWS console look like for the people who have been new to AWS console. This is a very good, I mean, still I'm using the old one. I can use the switch over to the new one, but this is how the console look like. The second thing, which I was talking about the Cloud Shell, if you see this icon, the small icon, which is like command line kind of thing. If I click on this, okay, so it's waiting around it. Okay, I think it's just giving, I don't know. Okay, so it's just waiting for the environment to run again in the region. And as I said, it's free of cost. It's going to use the same credential via which I have logged into my AWS console. And it's going to help me around setting up, which will take like few minutes. I mean, not 5 minutes. It should take like 1 or 2 minutes to set up. And behind the scene, you will see the best part of Cloud Shell is it comes by default with a couple of packages like the CLI and all. By default, they have been installed. So that helps you to fast track to do a quick troubleshooting around it. So as you can see, it helps around the stuff. Now, if I do very simple, S3, AWS S3 LS. This command S3 LS for the people, since you're doing it for the first time, AWS S3 LS. So that means list all the buckets in my account. So as you can see, all these are the buckets which I have in my account. That's what it lists. Neither I have installed CLI, nor I have done any kind of stuff, nor I have given any access key secret key. It's pretty simple. I just was on the screen for a minute and it gave me a quick thing. So now I can do any kind of operation with help of CLI in a quick, simple fashion. And I don't have to worry about playing with access key secret keys, spinning up EC2 instance to install and those kinds of things. This is as simple as what you can look forward to it. So this is about the Cloud Shell. And if you want to try it out, just click on this icon on your AWS console, log into AWS console, click on this icon, wait for a minute, and you will see this entire preparation window will come up, and then you can go and play around with it. So that's about how exactly you can work around with the Cloud Shell. And once you want to go, either you can download. I mean, there are different options you can do: download the file, upload the file, you can restart, or you can even delete, clean your entire home directory. If you have used from the past session, you can clean that out. And if you want to leave, you can just simply click on the AWS icon and it will take you back to the home page. So that's about how you can work around with the Cloud Shell. Second, we'll go around and understand the cloud formation. Okay. So cloud formation, there are two ways you can do. Either you can directly go, since it is recently visited service at my end, you can do that. You can go into this stuff. The new console, also you can try it out. The simpler way, how I do it is, I directly go in the search bar and type here. And as you start typing itself, you'll see under service. So you don't, if you're very new, I mean, first of all, the UI of AWS is very good. They have categorized all the different services, but sometimes it's 200 plus services. It sometimes becomes very difficult where exactly with the cloud formation will be. So if you really want to do, you can directly put in the search bar and it will directly give you a drop down and you can go to the console. So this is how the AWS console looks like for the cloud formation. Very neat, very clean, because I've done nothing on this cloud formation one yet. This is in Mumbai region. So you can see there's a welcome page. This is how for the people, if you have not used cloud formation, this is how it will look like to you. What I'll do next is create stack. And you can see three options here. Template is ready. That means I'll have my template. I can upload it. Use a sample AWS template. AWS also provides different kinds of templates for solution. Or design. So let me open this designer. So this is how the designer tool, the tool which I was talking about. Okay. So this is the tool I was talking about, the designer tool. If you're very new to the cloud formation, you don't know how to write the JSON and YAML format, this is how we can do. As well as, let's say you have someone written for cloud formation template in a JSON and you want to convert in YAML, you can upload into JSON and even convert it into YAML automatically. Those are the different kinds of stuff you can do. I'll show you one more thing, how I leverage this particular tool in and how it helps. Most of the time, we do documentation of the architecture. where people, when you create a document, you need the entire blueprint of your CloudFormation. So this is how I take the blueprint around it. Like I upload my CloudFormation template, and this helps me how exactly things have been connected. Very quick way to do it. I mean, again, there are different other tools are available, but again, this tool can also be leveraged in that fashion, and you can download this as an image, which you can put into your document, and then you can explain what and how things are being connected. So this is how you can leverage this particular tool. Let's say if you are not coming from an AWS, I mean, from JSON and YAML perspective, this is how you can look. You can play around. Let's say, for example, you can just drag this service from the left side. Let me zoom in here. Okay, so this is what I've just selected. Any services from left side, you can just do some depends on settings and those kinds of stuff. You can do it's the same what you can write in the CloudFormation via syntax approach. The same is what you can achieve from the UI also. So this is how generally you can do, and it provides, if I just close this, it provides all the different services what you need in day out, what is supported by the CloudFormation. Let me close this. Let me go back to our AWS console. So we were here on the AWS console. Since we already have a template, I will explain you what is the template. We will go with template is ready, and then I'll upload a template file. Now there are two options, as I said. One is when you do manually, you get two options. You can upload to S3 or you can upload it from locally. I'll tell you, whichever scenario you do, CloudFormation will always refer your template from S3 bucket. I'll show you why. Now, I upload a template. This is a template. Still, if you see the URL, what at the bottom it's referring is the default bucket which CloudFormation created for me in this particular AP South, which is Mumbai region. The link which is referring is the one. It's not referring my local or the one which I uploaded. It is referring the link which the template got stored into this bucket. If you go to your S3 bucket, there will be a template. There will be this bucket name, and this will be the template in it. So wherever you do it, you have CI/CD pipeline, you do it manually from AWS console, or you, let's say, have Python or some automation to do it. CloudFormation will refer the template from S3 itself. Behind the scene, it might feel like that they are locally uploading it, but behind the scene, the template will get uploaded to S3. So next, and here I'll give a demo. Lampstand. And here I'm taking a parameter. This is a parameter which helps me to image ID. Like image ID is like which operating system you want to launch. So I'll be using Amazon Linux. So I'm giving that. Then I'm saying which environment. Dev, test, UAT, prod. So I'll say test. I'll show you exactly what we are launching. Let me put this code into the execution. You can see the different options. So as I said, by default, even how many number of resources you have. If one of the resources also fails, it's going to roll back all the resources. So roll back all the stacked resources is a default. Certain times when you're testing it, you need to troubleshoot. So you can preserve the successfully provisioned resources. That, as the name suggests, any resources which are successfully deployed, you put the CloudFormation in a stop state, don't roll back. So this means any successful resources which are there, still will there, it won't roll back completely to zero. So this is you need to enable. By default behavior will be this. You can also do some additional settings around notification options if you want to receive the notification around via SNS. The rollback, if you don't finish the CloudFormation in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you roll back any sorts of additional stack policy. Those kinds of additional things, what you can do over and above to the default behavior, will keep all those options default. And I'll move on to the next. So this is how the template look like. The review page, we have kept all those things as a default option, and I'll click on acknowledge. This is a very important thing. You need to give the capability to CloudFormation to deploy. So anything which comes to IAM role, you need to authorize that, okay, I allow CloudFormation to deploy IAM role. And I'll click on next. Now, this is how the AWS console look like when it comes to the CloudFormation. Here, you will see this is a stack. As I was talking about the stack, the compiled version around it. So all those resources, the EC2 instance, you talk about the Elastic IP, security group, IAM role, whatever I'm launching, everything get packaged under one stack, which is named as demo lamp stack. And if you see, this is a stack information, like you can think of metadata or information what you required for the stack. This will be helpful in case if you have any old stack which was not deployed by you, but you want to understand. So from the description and all those things, you can read about it. The different events. Now, what exactly is happening behind the scene? Where exactly CloudFormation is as of now? So you get different events with timestamp, the logical ID, and the status of it. Resources is the particular tab where you get all the details around what are the resources which have been launched. Like for example, if you want to understand which is the security group launched by this particular CloudFormation stack, and you can directly click on this hyperlink and it will take you towards that security group. The output will not be visible unless this tag is successfully completed. As you can see, that was the last section. So after the CloudFormation is done, you will see the output get printed. The parameter is what we have provided. And this is the template, what we have uploaded. Now I'll switch over to my different screen. I think 1 second. So we can leverage this particular console. Let me explain you around this template. So as we focused. Increase the font a bit. Okay. So as we were talking about the template in the CloudFormation automation section, so this is a version how you provide. This is a description. Again, I've also done a shortcut. You should not do that. Description should be very elaborative as we saw in the example, what you are trying to achieve. You provide the metadata, like about the parameters, what kind of things you're doing, what you need, and all those stuff. This is the parameter sections. Again, if we remember or recall, parameters help you to make your template agnostic of account in a given region. So like very simple example, if I talk about in parameters, I could have hard coded the AMI ID here in parameters or directly in EC2 instance. The drawback would be it would have only work in let's say AP South. So in any account, it would have only worked in AP South. If I even tried to deploy this template in North Virginia, it would have failed if I would have hard coded the AMI ID, because AMI ID is a region specific. So those kinds of things you can automate it as a best practices. As I've checked this flags also, let me walk you through what I'm trying to achieve with this flag of dev, test, and prod. If you go in this mapping, as I was giving an example, right? Certain times you, based on the map, based on the environment, you take a call. How compute, I mean, from a compute perspective or other settings, how you want to launch your resources, property of it. Similarly, if you can see, I've been defining the mapping based on environment. If it is dev, launch T2 Nano. If it is test, launch T2 Micro. And if it is prod, launch T2 Small. Those kinds of setting I'm doing. And here at the bottom, I'll do kind of a mapping that what map. I mean, it's like a very simple map. So based on the flag user will give, that flag will be bounced against this map and the corresponding value of instance type will be fetched from this map. That we'll see in the EC2 section. So if I directly go to EC2, again, this is a resource section where I'm doing different resources I'm talking about. If you go here, this is if you go here, this is exactly what you're finding in a map. Find in map what instance type. So this I'm calling this particular map which I've defined here under mapping section. What I'm giving here is environment type. What user has given as an environment type and get me the instance type corresponding to it. So as when we are launching, if you go back to the parameter section, I've given test. So if you go and check the value corresponding to test is T2 Micro. So if I would have given dev, it would have picked up T2 Nano. So that's what we can do. And as I was talking about, it's not just provisioning. Most of the people always think CloudFormation is used for provisioning of infrastructure. Yes, you're right. But you can also do bootstrapping. You can add shell scripts, Python scripts in the user data section, and you can automate the base of it, the basic. And for application deployment, continuous deployment, you can use like code deploy on top of it. So as you can see, I've done a very basic stuff. I've installed a LAMP tag in it, and I'm running and setting up a PHP code. So when I'll execute now, since the CloudFormation is completed, as you can see from this left side, I'll take the URL and I'll put in the browser. When I'll put in the browser, you will see these two values will get printed, which is the instance ID and the availability zone. In which availability zone under Mumbai region this instance has got deployed, and what is an instance ID of it. I've given the security group. Again, please do recall, this is not the best practice of opening to everyone. It should be mapped to your specific IP address. Just for demonstration purpose, I've kept it open. So please do watch out. Don't try to make it 000. And then you print this output section where you have the different kinds of output here. Now, if I go back, as I said, right, once the CloudFormation stack is completed, if I just go back, here is out, you can see the output, which will be only available when your CloudFormation stack is completed. Now, let me take this URL and let me copy the link address, paste it here. And if you see this particular browser, this is what exactly the instance ID is, and this is the AP South member. So automatically, I have not only just deployed my EC2 instance, automate that, but I also automate the installation of PHP in it, the LAMP stack in it, and I'm executing a code runtime. So when I say my CloudFormation is done, it's done end to end. This is a very simple demonstration. You can build any complex things also around it. So that's about how exactly the automation or CloudFormation can help from an automation perspective. Let me go back a second, and now we will focus on the basics of the CI/CD. What we have explored today is the entire code commit, how you can do it and all. So the next demo, what I'll do will be around the static hosting. Most of the people on this call would have already tried to deploy a kind of a static website in S3, right? If not, then don't worry, I'll demonstrate it now. What I'll do is I'll build a simple CI/CD pipeline to automate the code deployment on static website. So first we'll set up a static hosting on S3 bucket, and then I'll set up a CI/CD pipeline to automate it. This is a very simple demo. Most of the people on this call would have already tried that, but there are many people who would be learning it for the new time. So that's why I kept this session's demo very light, so they understand. Next session, we'll do all those kinds of big stuff like blue, green, the entire code deploy and all. So today we'll only be focusing on the basic, you can say, hello world kind of demonstration. So what I'll do, since I've kept my security group open, as I said, which you should not do it, I'll go and I'll quickly delete my CloudFormation before someone hacks my EC2 instance. Nowadays, I think the attacks are very real time, so please do watch out. First of all, you should not open the port to 00. So I'll go and delete my CloudFormation. Okay. Now I'm back here. We'll go to first setting up the S3 one. I assume that everyone knows about S3. S3 is a storage, object-based storage, and the bucket which you create, the name needs to be globally unique. The bucket will be deployed within a specific region. So whenever I create a bucket, that will be deployed within that specific region. In our case, it's Mumbai, but the name should be globally unique. If you don't have a global unique name, you will get an error that bucket already exists. When I say globally unique, it is not limited to your region, not limited to your account. Globally, worldwide, the people who are using across that. So I'm not going to get into the trap of creating the bucket name now again. I already have a bucket which I've created. The Mind Static hosting is a bucket which I've already created. So what I'll do is first I will upload the code in it. So again, don't worry about it. Please focus on this demonstration. At the end of the session, I'll upload all of this, the entire thing, the presentation, the GitHub repository with the code and all, and we'll put in the description of this particular video. This video, which is getting lively streamed on YouTube, on the same location, you will see in the description, I'll add the GitHub link at the end of the session, which you can refer all the code snippet, including the presentation. So please follow on this the way how I'm doing it. Don't get into rush of executing it. So here, what I'm doing here is I'm uploading error HTML, index.html, and sample. These are the three files I'm uploading here. Very simple. I think most of the people would have already been knowing how to upload the objects in S3. Okay. Next, what I'll do is there are two more steps which I need to do is playing around with the property of it. Okay. This is one small tip I want to talk about on S3 static hosting. Static hosting, when you always talk about static hosting, as I said, I'm not going to create a new bucket. Why? Because it's very important. In any bucket which you enable as static hosting, you need to make that bucket as public. Do ensure you don't have any other code snippet in that bucket outside your HTML or your website. Nothing confidential, because you're going to make that bucket publicly available. Anyone in the world can access that bucket or that data. It need not to be part of my account. So please do ensure whenever you're using any bucket for static hosting, please ensure that code or any sorts of documents should be there, which can be read by publicly everyone or create another bucket and store all your confidential data in that. So there are two steps we need to do here. First is enable the static website. So what I have done, I've gone through the property tabs of my bucket, scroll at the very last, and you'll see the option enable static hosting. Edit, enable, and here you see a two option, host a static website, or even you can redirect. You can use S3 bucket as an option to redirect from one page to another page, right? That option you can also do. Most of the people always talk about hosting static website, but redirection also you can do with help of S3 bucket. So what I'll say, what is my index document? What is my main page? The main page name is index.html. And the error document, most of the time people don't do it when they are demoing it. Since you already have a file, we can give error.html. And I'll save this. Step one, achieve. Step one is to upload the code. Step two, achieved. We have uploaded we have enabled the static hosting. Do remember, don't forget, there are third step, which is manipulating or changing the permission of the bucket. First step under changing the permission is you need to disable. So what this setting means, this is a very good setting which says I am going to block the public access, all mediums of public access on this bucket. Generally, this comes as a by default. But in order to do the static website, you need to disable this and save the changes. You need to give a confirmation. That's why I was saying, since you're making a bucket public, do ensure don't store any sensitive data or any data outside your website code. Step one is public access. Step two, you need to apply a bucket policy. Again, don't worry. I already have the bucket policy with me. And the same bucket policy I'm going to put into the GitHub. The only thing what you need to do additional is take this ARN and paste this ARN here. Don't remove this /star. If I can. Don't remove this /star. Like if I do a command set, just if you see this ARN, you need to just replace this ARN. /star will remain the same. If you make a /star change, again, it will give you the permission error there. And once this is done, you need to save the change. As immediately you will see that publicly accessible, the bucket name has a red icon, publicly accessible. So that means you have successfully applied your policy. As a next step, we will go ahead and I'll go back to the section under property where we had the static website hosting, copy the URL and paste the URL under. You see, this is how the website look like. Again, I'm showing this entire thing in my browser itself. It's the specific browser, so you can see the plain white window. But this is what you can take the URL, paste the URL in another tab, and you will see it works. If you go to the sample, work. So this is the part one of the demonstration, how you can host a very simple HTML website on S3. And you can do it many times. If you're coming from a college background or any sorts of, let's say very new, you can do any kind of stuff, like any sorts of event hosting is there, any kinds of banner, those kinds of static work, you can easily do it. The best part is it can automatically scale. You don't have to worry about infrastructure, the setting up, the provisioning of different servers and all. You can also make it secure by using CloudFront and all. So folks who are very well versed about the AWS and all, you can also secure this. Like if you see here, it is giving no secure. None of the website as of today are no secured. They are all HTTPS. By default, when you use S3 hosting, is HTTP. You have to imply CloudFront on top of it, and you can get the HTTP and any certificate, any domain name. Like you can change this domain name also to your customized one. That's how you can design your own landing page or banner kind of stuff in the way theme, in the way custom domain you want to do. So that's about part one of the demo. As I promised, this is more about the CI/CD, not the S3. So we'll go back to our interesting section. And here I'll search for, as I start typing the developer thing, you will see the 4 services are there, right? So the first one is the commit, code deploy and code pipeline. What I'll do is I'll go and click on the code commit. So this is how under developer tools, this all services falls into for the developer standpoint, like source, these artifacts right? Most of the people will say what exactly this artifacts is. This artifacts, if you have any Docker, any kind of Docker image and that you want to store, that falls under this artifact. Build we covered, deploy we covered, and pipeline we have spoken about it. So this is how you can do most of this kind of stuff. Today's demo, what we'll do is, as I said, we'll first create a code commit repository. Whatever the code I've deployed in S3, the simple HTML, very blank HTML with just some text, I will change that HTML on the fly with help of the pipeline. So step one, what I'll do is I'll create a repository. Again, you did not have to create a repository. You can take the existing repository from GitHub. But this demo, I want to do it from code commit. The next session demo, I'll do it via GitHub. So let's say I'll just name the demo. I name the repository as demo. Give the description or the tag you want to do. Click on. This is very simple. This is how you have to create no nothing kind of license, payments, and those kinds of stuff. Everything is taken care. And for the demo purpose, I'll not going to set up locally in my machine. I'll directly upload a file from the console itself. Here you can see the option, and I'll click on upload file. I'll go back to my desktop, and I have already this file. As you can see, the color. Sorry, I mean I don't see the screen is there, but I'm just going to my desktop and I'm loading my one file, which is the index.html. This is like a red background, and it has like a simple text of hello world. So what we have seen is a simple one, which is all about. This is a very, I would say, very colorful HTML background. What we are uploading it. Again, then you can give all those kinds of stuff which you need, like around. I'm giving the name around it. I can give my email address around it. I can give the commit around it, and save. Okay. As you can see, as I was talking about, background is red color. The font is of white color, and this is what I'm giving, hello world. So if you see, I mean, let me zoom out, right? So the red color is the background. On that, the font is going to be a white color, and this is the text, hello world. So what I'll do as a next, I'll set up the code repository. Step one, your code repository is done. Step two, go to the code pipeline now. So we'll go to the code pipeline. I'll go back to the console, directly jump on the pipeline. If you see from the left side, I've expanded the pipeline and I've created the pipeline. Create pipeline, you can name anything. Again, this needs to be unique. So I'll say demo. Okay, demo static website. That's my pipeline. You can either create a new service role, or you can use the existing. I'll select the existing one. And then you can do additional settings, like where exactly you want to store the artifact, any custom location, an S3 bucket, or by default one, or you want to use encryption also. That also you can do it. We'll use the default setting. I'll click on next. Here are the, if you see on the left side, there are 5 steps we'll be doing. First, configure the pipeline, add a source, add a build stage, deployment stage, and finally review. We are currently at step 2, which is add a source. Source is kind of the, as I was talking about, you do not have to worry. If you want to use code pipeline, it's not just limited to code commit itself. You can use ECR, which is like the Docker image hub, the private repository, S3, Bitbucket, GitHub Enterprise. If you have your own enterprise, you can use any of this. We have set up code commit, so I'll select code commit. And as soon as I select code commit, the repository name, it's only one at my end. But if you at your end, if you are already have been using code commit, select the right repository, select the right branch, and there's 2 important settings. Okay. The first important settings is how exactly to detect the change. If let's say I make any change in my code commit, how exactly it will be detected? CloudWatch event or code pipeline? The recommended way, as you can see, also AWS suggests it's a CloudWatch event. Automatically, I'll show one more route. If I make any small change also and commit an HTML file, automatically the pipeline will get kick off. It will do all the required action, what we have set up in the pipeline, and perform the action. So this is what we'll do. We'll click on next. The important thing, you can build, as when I was talking and explaining you guys about the code build, I talk about AWS code build you can do. You can provide any Docker and all, as well as you can add your existing Jenkins server, the URL, the project, and that also you can do. Just for today's demo, since it is, I want to keep it very simple, I'll skip the build process and we'll see this entire end-to-end, like code build, GitHub integration, code build, code deploy in next session. But for now, today, what I'll do is I'll skip the build section and we'll directly jump on section 4th, which is the deploy. In this section, right, deploy section, you see different options: app config, cloud formation, code deploy, beanstalk, ECS, blue green, as well as S3. Since our end goal is to update the static website, which is hosted on S3. So we'll use that. And again, you can see the note here. You cannot skip this stage. So that means either most of the time people use code pipeline for two options. Either they will have code repository, which is amended with code build, so they can build and save it in S3, or they will have code repository with code deploy. You need to have either, you can have both build and deploy, but you need either one of them for sure. Either you can have build or you can have deploy. So we can have, since we have skipped the build, you cannot skip this stage. And what we'll do is we have to select S3 region. As I said, region is on Mumbai. There are different buckets in it. I'll go to the bucket which I was using, which is this one, the location of it. If it is with any specific location and all, do remember when you're hosting, since we haven't done any sorts of build process, so your code is already in a raw format, like the HTML file is very raw format. So you need to extract before deploy, and you need to give the deployment path. I don't want any deployment path. If we go back and recall our S3 structure, on the home, within the bucket itself, directly I've dumped the file. I don't have any deployment path like prefix folders. So I'll skip that. You can give any additional kind of stuff, like if you need like KMS and those kinds of things, you can do that, which we don't need it. And I'll click on next. I am on the review page. Last step, pipeline I've given the name and the role. I've given the code commit information. Build we have skipped. Deployment I've given to S3, pointing to S3 bucket, and I click on create pipeline. It will take around a minute or so to run the entire pipeline. And this is how the pipeline structure look like. Like you have the source and you have the entire deployment. This is how the entire pipeline will look like. And it will take like roughly around a minute or so to close and do. So as I said, it is done. So it's first step, as you can see from code commit, it's just clone my code. And under deploy, it is done. Now what I'll do is I'll go back to my page. This was the page where we left our website. Okay, I'll go back to the home page and I refresh it. This it was hello world, the white color hello world, and as well as the red background. That's what we were looking for. What I'll do is we'll keep this tab here open. I'll try to, not a magic, I'll try to show you how exactly in real time the CI/CD people uses, right, in an enterprise. This is a small thing. So what DevOps tells you, what's an important thing to learn from this demonstration? Always try to deliver small changes and don't wait for the right time. Keep delivering that changes and keep running that. So if I make, let's say, if I go back to my code repository, this was my file. And if I make a small change, instead of hello world, okay, I've changed the text. Welcome to the DevOps session. And I'll save it. Okay, and I'm committing the change. Now, as soon as I've committed the change, and if I go back to the pipeline, you will see the pipeline is in progress. Like again, this pipeline is very small, so it runs very fast, but you'll see the whole idea is as soon as I made a change, pipeline automatically triggered, it kick off the entire integration job, it kick off the entire deployment job. So that's the beauty of the CI/CD, what we need to learn. That first, try to make small change, frequently integrate the code and frequently deploy the code. That's how the name suggests, continuous integration and continuous deployment. Don't wait. Like I made a very small change. I'm 200% sure that is going to work. I've not made any mistake. But think of when you're developing the larger application. If you would have wait for, let's say, a week, end of the sprint, 2 weeks, or end of a month, and then you try to deliver everything, you're going to get into the conflicts, merge issues, the conflicts between how the things have been developed and all. That's exactly what CI/CD cuts through. Don't try to wait. There is no right time. This is the time. Go deliver your code, check out the code, and then you have the automation, this entire CI/CD pipeline, cloud formation, and all that automatically pick up the new changes from the repository, build, test, integrate, and deploy. So if I now go to my new, again, the page, this was the page where we left. Okay, so this is how the entire CI/CD works. Again, this is a very small demo, so it becomes very difficult to understand how things work. But we'll start when we do the next session. We'll do a simple application on EC2 instance where you will understand what exactly and why I'm insisting that when you do DevOps, always focus on adopting DevOps fully, maybe in different steps. But this is how you should do. So if I recall it, the demo, we have first launched and understand the Cloud Shell, which you can explore it from particular this icon itself from the console. Then we explore the entire cloud formation around the template walkthrough and all, which I'll give the code in the description, the GitHub link in the description of this video. The third demo where we set up a simple static hosting on S3, and then we have deployed or designed the entire CI/CD pipeline without writing any code and few clicks itself. Like it's a very simple one. That's why we have not used any sorts of additional supportive files, which you will see like build spec, app spec. Those are the additional files you need under code entire CI/CD pipeline, which we will have which we'll look into the next session. So there you define the code, how to work around with the code repository. Then build, we haven't gone through and explored in detail, which we'll do in the next session. And then we played around with the deployment. The deployment was very simple here. We pointed to S3. And then how we see if you make even a small change after deploying the pipeline, and if you have the event trigger, it automatically pick up the new change. Don't wait for it, perform all the action and deliver the new change around it. So let me go back to my presentation. So this is about what we have learned in the cloud formation. This is how the architecture was look around, and then we've done a couple of other demos. And that's what I have for today's session around the entire DevOps. I would say the session 1, where we have learned what DevOps is, how people used to work in traditional way, how DevOps help you to collaborate, communicate, learn, and release the things faster in the market. AWS offerings of different tools. We explore a couple of them. The remaining ones, log monitoring and advanced ones, we'll look into the next session. And we have done a good demo for the beginners, so you can learn and do it. I would request everyone, the whole reason of having this 1 week gap is that you guys do the exercise what I have done, and you follow up all the different materials which I'll share in the GitHub repository. So the next session you guys understand in detail, and then you don't have the basic question like what is code deploy, what is exactly code pipeline, why are we doing this. Again, I'll answer all of them, but you understand the very fundamental question, so we can focus on the core application and demonstration part in the next session. So that's all I have from today's session. I'll be open for any questions. I see a couple of questions are already in the chat, so I'll start answering them. If you have any other questions, please put it on the chat and we'll be looking forward to it. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll go back to the chat window here. So yeah, the first question which I see, what's the use case of the CI/CD in the real world? So CI/CD, the best example, or I can say the real example is any new things which AWS release. Like if you see AWS keep releasing any new features, new functionalities and all. So that's I was explaining in the beginning also. Have you seen any kind of banner on AWS saying, we are under maintenance, sorry, come after, let's say 30 minutes, come after 1 hour? No, right? They gracefully handle it behind the scene in such a fashion that even though if you're using that console, you won't even identify there is some change that has took place there. So that's how the beauty of CI/CD. CI/CD not only help you to minimize the downtime from a production standpoint, which is the end goal, it gives you different principles like make your build small, properly test it, properly integrate, collaborate, and deploy the changes, deliver the changes that it help you in a real example. And you can think about the AWS, which can be real example. And it can cut across different solution, which we learned at the beginning, like machine learning is there, big data or software development. You can do any of those things. The next question what we have is, what is the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment? Very good question. So most of the people do interchange it. Personally, I also many times use interchange like continuous delivery and deployment. Continuous delivery is you keep delivering your code. You keep pushing your code, checking it out, put into the GitHub or code repository. That's continuous delivery as a developer step. Deployment is you release the code. deploy in an environment, higher environment you talk about, right? Environment in a case like stage, dev, prod, keep deploying the code. As a developer, keep delivering the code, which triggers the pipeline, and then your entire operational DevOps team pick that up, put it into pipeline, and deploy in the production. So that's a difference around it. Most of the people, I would say, quite interchange delivery and deployment is because behind the scene there is an automation. Like as I make a very small change in the text of it, welcome to the DevOps session, and automatically it triggers the deployment pipeline. So that's how people generally get interchange between delivery and deployment around that one. Hope I answer your question around that. I see there's one more question. Can we run pipeline without build spec and app spec? That's what we have done. So if you see the demonstration, I think if you have joined just now, you can scroll back a few minutes back. I've not used build spec and app spec file. I've just run with manually configuring on my console itself, and I've taken care of it. I'm not given build spec and app spec file. So for sure you can run it. Again, build spec and app spec file are very important. When you talk about any industry level CI/CD, if you develop, that file gives you more control, and you can repeat from a repeatable fashion. You can repeat it. Let's say you have a pipeline in dev, you want to do it in other accounts or for other application. It helps you from an automation perspective. The whole brain is in those files, but it's not that you cannot create the pipeline without that. Hope I answer your question. Please, if you have any other question, post on the chat. I'll be happy to answer around it. Okay, cool. So I think I don't see any other questions. So I'll pass it on to Abhishek. Abhishek, sorry, I think there's one more question. How DevOps improves security? Okay, two questions. Really interesting audience, I would say. So it's a very good question. How DevOps improves security? Okay. So first of all, many a times you would also hear in the market there is something called as DevSecOps. DevOps and SecOps, security. Dev, SecOps, Ops, like development, security, and Ops. Like they merge all these three terms also as a DevSecOps. DevOps help you from a security perspective. My answer, I would say, is it's a very big stuff. The whole idea of how DevOps helps from a security perspective is it helps you to follow the proper practices, like the proper practice in terms of your IAM policies, proper practice in terms of the automation, proper practice in terms of log monitoring. These are the foundational things which is required in terms of security. Now, what exactly the security in? Proper governance model, proper traceability. That's what I mean, there are different ways you can define security, but in simple words, if you say about security, it's what you want to trace. You want to see how exactly your environment is working. Is it secure? Is it like all the right people have the access and all? That exactly DevOps help you from the foundational layer. Like log monitoring is there, traceability is there, observability. Those are the things tightly coupled. These are the different principles that is implemented via DevOps. So DevOps, you can think when you're building, like building a physical building, right? Your core groundwork, the core foundational pillars are the DevOps pillars. And then on top of it, you can build like security is there, ML ops is there, you have your entire data ops and all. But your core automation, your core capability relies on the DevOps that help you to go and look forward those different kinds of other stuff. So the answer simple would be security, the kind of principles which you lay down when you're designing your architecture or the processes from DevOps in terms of log monitoring, the list privilege access, the automation of infrastructure, that will help you to go and achieve security. The next question is, please tell us the important DevOps tools. Okay, the important DevOps tool I would say is the two things. I mean, technically, I always put it on three things. The layer stack which I had, the CI/CD, that's one. The second one is the entire automation. When I say CI/CD, is the entire build and release cycle. What we have done, the simple demonstration of S3. That's one part. Second is the infrastructure automation. And the third is the log monitoring. Because these are the three things. One is your entire cadence of build and release. 2 is your entire automation of infrastructure, the entire playbook and runbook. And the third important thing is the log monitoring. So you measure, monitor, and learn. These are the 3 important pillars of it. And then there are different around AWS offerings, AWS native services are available. And then there are different other services available, which is around possible, which help you to get into that kind of different tools, DevOps tools, which is required, like different layers around it. Like I'll try to have this question answer in the next session also. Like as we're talking about CI/CD, you see AWS native, you have Jenkins. In case of in case of automation, you have things like CloudFormation is there. There are many people who also use Terraform. So many other tools available. CDK is also there. So there are different other offerings available. But from a pillar perspective, 3 things I would say: CI/CD, automation, and the last thing is the log monitoring, which is very important if you talk about from my perspective. Moving towards the next question, how many DevOps sessions are planned? Okay, so we have 2 sessions are planned. This is session 1. We'll have a gap of next weekend, and on 26th we'll have a session 2 where we'll try to cover up. We'll take this foundation and we'll continue and look more advanced use case around it. Okay. Moving towards the next question, can we use Terraform and Ansible code along with code build? Okay. Good question. Okay, let me answer you in that fashion. First, if you understand your entire foundational pipeline construct, code build is for the building process of your code, packaging, as I was referring. It's not for the deployment. The deployment has around the kind of Terraform and Ansible, those kinds of combination I've seen in the market people do use. That falls under the deployment part of it, where you see the cloud formation and those kinds of stuff. As of now, I don't see a direct integration which you have when it comes to Terraform and Ansible with help of your code deploy, because you have things like your Chef, which you can use. That's something people generally use, right? So that what you can leverage in form of the replacement, and you have the cloud formation in that. So in case of deployment, you will be using Terraform and Ansible that falls in deployment section, and then AWS have the relevant AWS offering, which is the cloud formation and Chef. That what you can leverage from that perspective. Okay, I hope I answer your question. Moving towards the next question. Difference between AWS DevOps and all. Okay, very fundamental question. There is no difference. There is a DevOps, that's a core fundamental and principle, and there are different offerings what AWS provides to achieve those fundamentals and principles. So there is nothing called as AWS DevOps versus DevOps. There is DevOps, and AWS provides different tools to achieve those DevOps principles and practices. So it's one and the same thing you can think of. There is nothing specifically as called as AWS DevOps. That's why if you see the session name also, getting started with DevOps on AWS. It's not AWS DevOps. So don't get into the trap that is something specific AWS provides for DevOps. It's a fundamental, I would say, basics, which DevOps provides is a framework, and then AWS help us to achieve that framework. Moving towards the next question, please share a bit more on AWS artifacts, use case, and real world project. Okay. Most of the project, I'll see in the software side also, things have been changing. People are more moving towards containers, where you talk about ECS or EKS. So now how it works in a real life is, you have a code. Now I had a very simple code as an HTML file. Similarly, the people also, development teams, to push their Python code, Java code as a raw format in your code repository. Again, Bitbucket, GitHub, or code commit. I'm not focusing on that. As I said, the whole idea of code build is to package that code in a compiled format. So let's say you have something as a Java code. You clone the code repository in the code build, you package it via Maven. If you have Maven is another automation, dependency automation for Java, you package this out, and then you create the entire output for it. Now, if you are using the containerization services, like you talk about ECS or EKS, or you have vanilla Docker on EC2, you need a Docker image. You cannot directly put those jar file or PYC file in containers, right? So what exactly Artifacts does is, you can also, as an outcome of your build, you can generate a Docker image, and you can push that Docker image in ECS or in your private repository. So that's exactly AWS Artifacts section, which we talk about in that 4 services. Artifact section help you to generate that output of ECR, the Docker image also, which you can store in ECR. You can have your private kind of private hub integrated there, which you can use. So that's exactly the real world example we can talk about the artifact. So the normal flow is you put the code as a raw format, the code build compiles it, generates a Docker image. The Docker image goes to ECR, and then the code deploy, which may be CFT, or the code deploy refers the ECR. So when you're doing the code deploy section, there was an option to S3 and ECR. So ECR is what you point to this new image with the tag, and you can refer that for the deployment. So that's a real example what you talk about the AWS artifact. Moving towards the next question, do people use EC2 in real world example against Lambda or serverless? Very good question I was talking about. Again, this is not meant for DevOps. I would say it's very subjective. Why I'm saying very subjective is it depends purely on your use case, whether you will use EC2, as I was talking about EC2, ECS, the container part of it, or Lambda. It directly depends what kind of application are you using, what kind of application you're trying to build. If it is very event driven, the frequency is not that much. Like every hourly you are invoking something for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, that is the kind of behavior, Lambda makes sense. But whereas if you need something which is available 24/7, you cannot have like, you need 24/7, anytime the request can come, then you will opt for something like EC2 and ECS kind of stuff. So it's very subjective. And my answer is yes. If I talk about personally my experience, many a times I've used EC2, ECS also compared to Lambda. It's very subjective on kind of architecture or kind of problem what you're solving. Okay. Moving towards the next question, similar lines, casually asking, is EKS or ECS are tough? No. So it's all about, I'll tell you, if you think, right, if you go back to my basic compute, in the AWS User Group India itself, we have done a bootcamp on solution architect. In that, if you go to the compute section, your base always remains the EC2 instance, your compute. And then you have the EKS and ECS. Those are on advanced, I would say, how you can leverage the best on that compute platform to automate it. EKS and ECS, if I talk about, it seems bit difficult. I mean, ECS has been the best service I've seen of AWS, honestly. The way it's very simple and provides a vanilla Docker form, that's very good. EKS also is the kind of features like deployment, replica, the kind of network policies it provide. It's very good. And most of the organizations I use EKS and ECS. It's not tough. You have to practice it. Initially, you might feel it's tough. I'll need some time to learn. But as you start practicing it, it becomes very easy. It's similar like how you talk about CloudFormation. Many people still, as of today, like after 6-7 years, people feel CloudFormation is tough. It's not tough. You have to practice it, keep practicing it, and then it will be easy for you. And the best part about what ECS and EKS is very good documentation offering from AWS. So that will make you easy as you start practicing it. So according to me, it's not tough. Initially, it may be tough. It was tough for me also at the beginning. But once you start practicing it hands-on, it will become very easy. Okay. Any other question? Okay, I think we are good. Yep, I think Abhishek, we are good. Over to you.
Cool. We are very glad that I saw this lot of questions. So people interacting with you was a very great thing today. And I hope Sanchit have answered every question and in a very clear fashion. So okay. So talking about session was a very good, Sanchit, and thanks for taking time out on Saturday mostly, and walking us through every basic fundamentals for DevOps. And of course, the next session would be more interesting because now the fundamentals are being clear, and most of the things will be in a practical way, so you will get to see how things work actually, in real time. And also we have planned something, the giveaway we talked about for JetBrains. So what we have thought is, um, in combining both of the sessions. So at the last of the second session, we'll be seeing, based on the interaction, we'll choose two lucky people to have a subscription, 1 year subscription for any JetBrains ID or tool, and we'll give it away. And we'll also create a form for you guys to fill. We don't have it right now, but you'll get it before the next session starts, so that you can fill out, and we will announce the winner for the same also. So this one thing I forgot to mention at the start of the session, but here we go. And once again, thanks Sanchit, and we'll be looking forward for the next session. Once this session is over, in 2-3 days, we'll roll out the emailers and the more details about the session, so that people will understand what we are going to cover next. And yeah, so yes, on that note, we'll close this session. And thank you once again for the audience to join, and you are a very great audience. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think, as Abhishek mentioned, thank you so much for joining. It was really fun interacting with all of you guys, and I hope you join the next session. As Abhishek
Yes.
mentioned, the cool swag we'll have it at the end of next session, as well as the presentation and the code snippet. As I said, the GitHub repository link I'll post on the description of this video, so you can see from User Group India YouTube channel as well as User Group Nashik YouTube channel. Under both description, I'll add that link. You can refer from it. And the Google form also will add the link once it is available. We'll put it on the LinkedIn, as well as we'll put it in the description of video. So from that one space, you can get everything. And please try out, go through the material, and have more questions for me in the next session. And let's make it more interactive. So after this end of today's 2 sessions, I'm pretty sure you learn a lot. You guys apply all the DevOps knowledge what we have captured from these 2 sessions. So thank you so much for joining. That's all from today's session. I'll be looking forward for you guys in the next session. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.